Alright, so what we're looking at here, this is after the radio rack has been removed. We're looking at the throttle cables here. And on this particular model, what we have to do is remove, there's a bracket. You can just see right here that's been removed. There's a bracket that comes up and goes over the top of these wires here, and these cables are clamped to it. We had to remove that because we need more clearance for the DSC-90 tray. This was our little temporary fix. We just zip tied the harness down after Cody and we punched a hole in this using a small, like 3/4 inch punch. The old cables, they go through the top here. I drilled a pilot hole through the bottom and then opened it up, put the punch in, punched it, brought the cables down. But I'm actually going to make a bigger hole per Dan's drawing using the punch that was provided to us. And there's should be enough room back here to do this. It does get pretty tight. And if you can see, this is one of the elevator cables here. It's pretty close to the control cables, or to the to the engine controls. So we're gonna have to be careful when we're drilling down here, not to get any shavings and stuff, but also to make sure that we're not gonna clip the elevator control cable. You don't have to disconnect anything, but probably wouldn't be a bad idea. Anyway, we'll see how it goes. Alright, so I'm gonna cut this tie for now. Pull that out of here. Alright. Now these two guys, I'm gonna pull them up and out of the way for now. Here is the punch that we got from you guys. It's Milwaukee 1.25 inch conduit, which ends up being 1 3/4 inches when you cut it. So you have to cut a 3/4 inch hole for the draw screw, and the hope is that I can fit this on the back side. So the die here will go underneath in here, and then this draw will go on the back side. So let's see if it fits. Okay. So that's where we're at right now. It is putting some sideways pressure on that elevator control cable, but I think it'll be okay. If you're concerned, what we could do is loosen the bell crank, which is under the floor, to give this some loosening, so it's not quite so tight here. I may end up go ahead and doing that, actually, because it's putting a lot of sideways pressure on that. And honestly, it might not be a bad idea to double check the cable tensions when you're doing the Autopilot installation anyways, because that can cause issues for people sometimes. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen up that belt crank. I'll be right back. Okay, so in the back here, this is where the elevator control rods are, the turnbuckles. Let's see, so it's this one right here. Just have to take the in here. You just have to remove the safety clips, 2 safety clips, and then you loosen up the turnbuckle, and that'll just relieve a little bit of tension on that cable, because right now it's got about 35 pounds on it. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then I'll get back to you. Alright, here's our punch. Okay, so we're going to stick this around behind here. through this hole that I've already made. And this cable has a lot more slack on it now, so I should be able to get that in there, no problem. Which I can, good. There. So now what I want to do, back it out a little bit. I gotta see if I can get this guy down in there. So what I've done here, get the camera out. You can see I've got the punch in there, and if I go over the top here, you can see there's the back side. This is the nut that I have to tighten down. See if I can get over here. So this is what the back side looks like. Here's that elevator cable that I've moved out of the way. It's just bending off to the side a little bit. And that should work when I tighten down this. This is a 1-inch socket that you'll need, or a wrench. Tighten that down. So we'll get this in position again, where you had it before. Now, use my 1-inch wrench here, make sure we're tightening it. And I'm going to make sure this is all the way down before I do that, because otherwise it will take longer. Okay. Alright, so making sure there's no wires that are going to get snagged in there. Should be good. Alright. We're clear on the back side, we're good there, so I'm just going to start tightening this down. There we go. Alright, so now we've got a nice big keyhole there. We should be able to get these wires, have enough slack here to be able to push those down. And we'll push some, we'll put some anti-chafe protection around it like that one has. Put that chrome strip cat track stuff around the outside there. And that'll take care of it. No mess, no chips anywhere. Good. Alright. Alright, so just so you can see where we're at here. So if I measure down from the top of the hole there, it's approximately 1.25 inches. Actually, it looks like it's about exactly 1.25 inches down from the top of the hole here to the top of the slot there. And then the hole itself is 1.75 inches, I think, diameter. That's what the punch was. Let's stick this back in here. Yep, 1.75 inch hole. Okay. So, and then the top of the hole to the top of the slot is another, that's 1.25 inches. So that's plenty of space. It should be more than enough. And I didn't damage the cable here. I'll go back and I'll tighten that up as part of my install. And we've got this track stuff we can put around to protect the cables so they don't chafe. Alright, so this is after we've got the chafe protection in here going wrapped all the way around so the cables are protected. We have a couple options here. One is we could put an 8L clamp in here behind, down underneath. You'd have to fabricate a little bracket You know, something sort of like this. You can't use a real 90-degree bracket back there because the angle of this plate versus the angle of these cables, it ends up being about a 45. I think so. It would sit something like this. You know, a couple holes drilled in there on the back side. That is going to be challenging to get it in the right spot to make sure these cables are down far enough. The other suggestion that Cody had was, if you remember at the beginning, there was a zip tie through here, right through this clamp. Which would be a lot easier and simpler. And then you just go around those two cables and zip it down. Like so, and cinch it down. And that is going to bring the cables down pretty far, so they're not going to be a problem anymore. You should have enough clearance here. The mixture cable, this one doesn't seem to be an issue. It's far enough over and far enough down already that it's not going to be a problem. It's usually these two cables that are the issue. But with this keyhole cut out, these things are protected. If that's zip tied there, that should be all you need to do. Alright, so the next thing I want to do is this line here. I'm going to cut this off so I can lower that down so we have some room for our wires on the other side. So for this, same deal. I just use these cutters. And they fit right in there like that, and basically it's just going to continue this line all the way around. That and that. So what I want to do is I'm going to bring this, I'll do it on the inside so you can see. I'm going to want to lower this down. Alright, so it's got to come down to about there. So what you end up doing is you having this is going to be about flush with that. That should give you enough space inside the rack for the wiring harness to reach. But obviously you got these two nut plates in the way, so you have to cut little reliefs out for those to go around those. You could drill out the nut plates and then re-drill it through that if you wanted to. It's up to you, however you want to do it. But how I do it is I just cut little notches around these guys, and then I usually put 3 rivets right in there like that. Okay? So I'm going to go do that, and I'll show you the finished product when I come back. Here is the almost finished product. So I've lowered this down, so now it's flush with the top there. I've drilled 3 holes for my rivets. Here's my notches to go around the nut plates that are there. So now I'm going to rivet this on here. So you're going to use some small 80 rivets. Or maybe if I go this way. Nope, that's not going to work. Alright, I gotta go get the rivet gun. Right, so we've riveted these together. So this is all on here. Now this is non-structural, so 3 rivets is fine. I mean, this is just to hold this connector tray in place, but that should be good. Okay, so this is the back shell for the radio rack. I'm taking the fan off the back here. It's just long screws. There's 4 nut plates. They just unscrew right out. The fan, put that aside for right now, just so it's not in your way. So a couple things that I like to do on these It's not required to do this, but it's going to make your life a lot easier. So I've made we have these templates that we've made up that you can put right over here. You just align it with this gap here, and then you can cut out this section of the rack. So later when you're installing, you can actually get your fingers in there to get to some of those coax cables. And you can do it on both sides, but really just this side is the one you want. This will be the Autopilot side when it's installed in the plane. This side, it's nice to have, but it's not required for sure. But this side is where all the coaxes are, so that's going to be a big help later on. So I like to cut that out. The other thing we're going to need to do is these two top connectors that connect to the airframe side. You're going to have to cut this tray and lower this down and reattach it, because when we lower that down, you're not going to be able to make it fit, and I'll show what I mean on this. So because we put the new IFD 440, or 540 rather, here, it's a taller tray than this old one, so it's extended down, and when you do that, this whole wiring harness was built to fit the old one. So if you can see the Autopilot here at the bottom, this is where it really becomes an issue, because the Autopilot, I can kind of make it fit right now, but when I'm actually putting the backplanes on, they get very, very tight. You really need an extra inch or so to fit those down there. That'll make more sense when I'm starting to wire this, but basically what it means is we got to lower, this whole tray needs to come down. So I'm going to cut it off, lower it down. I'm going to cut out some reliefs to fit around these two nut plates, and then I'll re-rivet it on there. You can also use screws and nuts to put it back on, and that's it. So the other thing is, you can see this has been chewed up a little bit, but drilling a hole in the back down here somewhere to pick up at least one, if not both of these racks is nice, and that'll help when we're fitting the whole thing in there later on. Yeah, that's pretty much that. So, all right, so I'm gonna make some marks here. Actually, I can do that. So what I'm gonna do is line this up on here, and then just make a line, make a line. And now we've got that there. And then this just is the edge of this. That aligned up there. I usually just line it right across there. Make one line there. And I am going to cut this side out as well, because it will make things a little easier. Okay, so here I am modifying this. So I just drilled out a couple holes here. I did a smaller pilot hole, drilled it to a 5/16 inch, which is about a good radius. Go ahead and deburr that hole a little bit on the inside as well. And then I just use a pair of offset aviation style snips, and you just cut right along the line like a pair of scissors. can put, so like right here, there's some of that grom strip, cat track, whatever you call it, plastic chafe protection there. You can throw some in there. There's no wires running through here. This is just for access for fingers, so that's not as necessary, but that's that. So I'm going to do the same thing to the other side, and I'll be right back. Okay, so now I've got my relief cut on this side, and I've got my same thing cut out on that side. So now I've got a lot of space to get my fingers in there later on. Alright, so before we start wiring, it's always a good idea to make sure your wires are going to reach where you need them to. So what you're going to want to do is build up the stack up of the rack how you want it to be. So for our purposes, we'll have we're going to have the audio panel at the top, 540, 440, DFC 90. And the best way is to just get it all aligned in there. And then mark all your holes, drill new holes for the screws and everything. Make sure everything's aligned up good, and you can use tape and stuff to do that. And I always try to get it just right here. Now one thing is these old clip nuts at the bottom, they're a little bigger. They kind of interfere because the new rack is actually going to come down a little further than the old stack-up did. So you're going to take these off. I'm going to replace them with these thinner ones. You can see they're about half the size of these old ones, so that should give us just enough. It is going to be a tight clearance issue, but it should give us just enough space to get those in there. Make sure this is in here all the way. And some of the holes already line up, which is nice, so you only have to drill a couple of them. So that, and you can see some of these holes are a little bit almost there, like that one almost reaches, that one's good. And that one I gotta drill, that one's good, that one's good. So I'm gonna mark these holes and then I'll drill them and then show you what it looks like. Alright, so I got these guys all drilled out and I'm gonna put them on the racks here. I'll show you what that looks like here. I also switched this out for the Avidyne rack. That should all line up pretty good. And what I tried to do is keep the face of the sides of the rails in line, and that should be all right. This may need to be tweaked a little bit once I slide the units in. It's always a good idea to check, make sure, and it's sitting pretty level, so that's good. That means I did it right. So yeah, there's the radio rack. The next thing will be, we're going to modify this a little bit, fit on the back here. I'll show you that next. So something else I wanted to mention here, after I got the rack screwed together here, if you remember there was a nut plate that was here. This is the one, so you can see how much further down this is shifted. It's probably come down an additional, I'm going to say 3/8 of an inch or so, because it was sitting up, well, I mean you can see where the old rack was sitting before, so it's maybe a good 1/2 inch. So this obviously doesn't fit here. As I'm looking at it now, that even the skinny one is not really going to fit. You can see the hole's not really going to line up. So normally what I would recommend doing is taking this rail here and shifting it down so you have a little more of a gap here. So the whole thing would shift down usually about 1/4 inch to 5/16 of an inch, depending on, you know, how you want it to fit in the plane. That'll give you plenty of room for this to fit. It'll also give you a little more clearance on the bottom here, but when you start to run out of room on the top, when this goes into the plane, it fits into the subframe, and you usually have to trim that, but we're going to try not to do that in this case. So I'm going to leave it like this for now, and what I may do is elongate this bottom hole a little bit just so that I can make sure I can get a screw in there, and we'll see how that fits with the interior later on. So I'll keep you posted.